is a good bill, as has been evidenced by our speakers on the floor. S. 1582, the Genius Act, is a simple bipartisan bill that's long overdue and is based on that bipartisan work in both chambers. Wow, we're actually legislating. We're seeing bills passed in both chambers. It's exciting for me to see the good work of my friend Chairman Tim Scott of the Banking Committee in leading a policy-driven effort to put America's financial leadership first. S. 1582, as written by Bill Hagerty, does exactly that. And Mr. Speaker, 68 senators voted for this bill in the United States Senate. 68. A quote, cloture-proof margin is only 60. 68 senators came together, including 18 Democrats, who vigorously debated this bill, worked on this bill, improved this bill, modified it, and sent it to us in the House. Likewise, Chairman Steil here in the House worked with those senators on both sides of the aisle all along the way to take the ideas that we had here in the House and our markup and our Stable Act and improve Genius. So with this legislation today on a bipartisan basis, we're modernizing our financial infrastructure, streamlining transactions, lowering costs, expanding financial tools for everyday Americans. This is about putting American innovation first. It's about creating a future where innovation is met with clarity, not confusion, where American ingenuity is empowered, not stifled by an outdated, not fit-for-purpose regulatory regime. The Genius Act will help maintain U.S. global leadership in financial technology, digital innovation, the power of the reserve currency, the United States dollar, while reinforcing important consumer protections and critical regulatory oversight where it's needed most. This is common sense, forward-looking legislation that reminds me of the earliest days of this House chamber agreeing in 1996 not to tax or regulate the Internet, but to tax and regulate how people use the Internet. This is a keen example of that principles-based legislation. I urge all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support the Genius Act, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Pursuant to House Rule 580, the previous question is ordered on the bill. The question on third reading of the bill, those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading. Read the title.
An act to provide for regulation of payment stablecoins and for other purposes.
The question on the passage of the bill, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed. Gentlewoman from California is recognized.
So what? Ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote of the yeas and nays will rise. If a sufficient number have risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8, Rule 20, further proceedings of this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to advocacy by our majority whip here in the House, Mr. Tom Emmer of Minnesota, and I rise in strong support. At stake is a fundamental choice about the future of money in America, a choice between freedom or government control. Central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, put the government at the center of every financial transaction.
$2025 IRS tax forgiveness now has open enrollment. It's easy to 99 tax
U.S. That is a continuation of the evolution of the private sector guiding the expanse of our money, how we use our money to make payments. formerly starting out with cash. We wrote checks. We used debit cards and ATM cards at the point of sale. We use credit cards. We can send money by wire transfer or by an electronic check. And so the private sector has innovated all along that continuum of financial technology, and that's why today we don't want the Fed to drive that, to potentially control it, to issue it, for individuals to bank at the Fed and be subject to these risks to privacy or surveillance. Let's stick with the approach of private sector solutions. We've already seen small glimpses of this possibility under the prior administration. House Financial Services Subcommittee Chair for Oversight and Investigations, Dan Muser of Pennsylvania, has been having a robust discussion about the debanking policies of the prior administration for politically disfavored industries. The capability for the government then to follow on and directly freeze or delete Americans' funds on a whim, it's not compatible with our values, with our cherished freedoms, or our way of life, or even the past approach to the evolution of payments in our country. Moreover, a government-run digital dollar would put the Federal Reserve potentially in direct competition with the private sector. Further, a CBDC would create unnecessary risks by consolidating financial power within the federal government, limiting choice and threatening the very innovation that made American financial markets the strongest in the world. For all these reasons, I'm thankful that consistently my friend, our colleague, Majority Whip Tom Emmer, has been leading the charge to prohibit the implementation of a U.S. central bank digital currency. And I thank him for the work he's done to elevate this issue in the Congress and bring this bill before us once again for a vote on this House floor. I hope all my colleagues can recognize that Article 1 determines how we issue money and how we value it, that that's a power of the Congress, and that we're not delegating it to the executive. We control that in Article 1. This bill says that you can't issue a CBDC without that specific, explicit authority and direction from the Congress. I urge all my colleagues to join me in supporting Mr. Emmer's bill, and I reserve.
The gentleman from Arkansas reserves. The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume. Over the last hours, we heard arguments from the other side of the aisle that the United States must prioritize innovation. The Republican crypto bills we considered will create giant loopholes in our federal financial laws that put consumers and investors at risk in the name of innovation. These bills would increase the chance of another costly financial crisis like the one in 2008 that led to trillions of dollars of wealth being wiped out in the name of innovation. So it comes as no surprise to me. So if it comes as a surprise to me that the last bill we will debate would block any research, pilots, or consideration about how to digitize the U.S. dollar, it is the reason that I call H.R. 1919 the Anti-Innovation Act. Now, we've been discussing a lot about cryptocurrency. We've talked about two different acts, the Clarity Act, the Genius Act. We've talked about a lot of the intricacies of crypto. But the general public does not understand all of this because the big issuers, the big boys, literally kind of own all of the information. They're the issuers, et cetera, et cetera. It's time for the United States government to take charge. And our central bank must be involved in the study and the research so that we don't have issuing crypto or anything else without the federal government knowing and being in control. H.R. 1919 would immediately halt and prohibit the United States from any research and exploring the potential benefits of a central bank currency, or CBDC. A central bank digital currency is essentially a digital version of the dollar issued by the federal government that uses crypto technology known as blockchain to record everything and everybody who owns tokens. Open it up, let's know who the big issuers are. There are two types of CBDCs, and this bill bans both of them. A retail CBDC is made available to consumers directly from the Federal Reserve or from a bank or other financial institutions. A wholesale CBDC is not available to the public, but only to the banks and other financial institutions. This bill would ban both this kind of CBDC. Now, when Republicans raise concerns about CBDCs, they're talking about retail CBDCs. But because they're so adverse to knowledge, adverse to studying things, they have no idea that their bill blocks research into other forms of digitizing the dollar that would truly cut costs for the people. For example, J.P. Morgan Chase has estimated that $100 billion could be saved in cross-border transactions every year if a wholesale CBDC is adopted. Now, earlier this week, in the Rules Committee, we heard Republicans claim that we need to weaken oversight of private crypto because doing so will help cross-border payments. So I would ask my colleagues across the aisle, why abandon any research into making the greenback ready for the future? The thing is, if this bill passes, the United States would be the only country in the world to ban any research in the world on CBDCs. What are you afraid of? Why don't you want the knowledge to be held and explained? 137 countries are racing ahead, some studying, others issuing their own CBDCs. The foreign currency markets are evolving, but Republicans want to stick their heads in the sand. Those 137 countries and currency unions represent 98% of the global GDP, and China is one of the front runners in the global race to implement a viable CBDC. And do you know why China is quickly rolling out its digital currency? It desperately wants to create an alternative to the U.S. dollar to determine the dominance of our currency. Mr. Speaker, America reaps great riches because our currency, the dollar, is the primacy currency used around the world for all sorts of trade, from sales of oil to commodities to financial contracts. One of those benefits is that when we take out a loan to buy a car, or use our credit cards, our interest rates are much lower than in other countries. Another benefit is that the United States can pressure bad actors from Iran to Russia to China by cutting off access to our financial system and the dollar using sanctions. But those same countries would love to replace the dollar with their currency or something else. One way China hopes to do this is to show that the dollar is an antiquated currency, whereas the Chinese currency is the future. It is so short-sighted to not even study how the dollar could be digitized, especially during the same week that Republicans want to let private companies create their own currency. And so it is very important for all of us to understand that if you want to be innovative, if you want innovation, you will study, you will understand, you will be able to explain. If you really want to protect the American dollar, you will not put your head in the sand. You would allow this research to go on to make sure that the American dollar stays strong, even in digital. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from California reserves. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask unanimous consent that I could insert in the record the Congressional Budget Office estimate for this bill.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask our distinguished chair of our subcommittee on financial technology and digital assets and artificial intelligence, Mr. Stile of Wisconsin, to address this bill for 2.5 minutes.
The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
I thank my friend Chairman Hill. I rise in strong support of the Anti-CBDC Surveillance Act. And I want to thank Whip Emmer for his leadership on this issue. He's actually one of the first in Congress to raise the alarm. And since then, the case has only grown stronger about the risks posed by U.S. CBDC. Mr. Speaker, the globe and the global economy is at a crossroads when it comes to digital payments. Jurisdictions around the world are upgrading their payment systems to be faster, to be cheaper, and cross-border. The payment sector is leading the way, including payment stablecoins, to enhance the payment rails. As the United States grapples with modernizing our own payment systems, we're confronted with a choice. Do we empower free market solutions that protect privacy, protect individual liberty, or do we centralize control over payments in the hands of the federal government? To me, Mr. Speaker, the choice is clear. Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller has repeatedly warned that a CBDC is, quote, a solution in search of a problem. Yet, nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, in 2022 Executive Order on Responsible Development of Digital Assets, President Biden sought to explore a U.S. central bank digital currency, placing, quote, the highest urgency on research and development efforts into the potential design and development options of a United States CBDC. But President Trump understands a CBDC's threat to American freedoms. In a January 2025 executive order, President Trump explicitly prohibited any federal agency from issuing or advancing a CBDC without direct congressional authorization. In a free society, Mr. Speaker, financial privacy and private property rights must be protected. The American economy thrives on choice, competition, and liberty, not on coercion and control. I urge members to support this bill in preserving liberty, protecting privacy, and ensuring the United States of America is a global leader in financial innovation. I yield back.
The gentleman from Wisconsin yields back. The gentleman from Arkansas reserves. The gentlewoman from California, you're recognized.
I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, who is also the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Digital Assets, Financial Technology, and Artificial Intelligence. He knows more about digital assets than anybody on the opposite side of the aisle.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady for her confidence and her time. I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 1919, the so-called Anti-CBDC Surveillance Act. At the expense of U.S. global economic leadership, this misguided legislation would prevent the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency, also known as a CBDC. Unfortunately, the facts surrounding the development of CBDC has been obscured by disinformation, conspiracy theories, and extreme political ideology. Republicans and the crypto industry have made unfounded claims that a CBDC will be used as a surveillance tool by the federal government. Let's be clear about what a CBDC is. A publicly issued digital dollar that would be regulated by the Federal Reserve, an independent Federal Reserve that would have the full faith and backing of the U.S. government. A CBDC would serve as an alternative to existing forms of payment and will have benefits including instant payment settlement, provide a medium for cross-border transactions, and foster greater financial inclusion. And Congress could require that the architecture of a central bank digital currency not have surveillance capabilities. More than 130 countries are or have been studying, or they have launched their own government-backed digital currencies, including every major world power. Meanwhile, the U.S. remains far behind amid an increasingly and blatant misinformation campaign about the features of a digital currency. Let's talk about the EU. It is widely acknowledged that the EU has one of the most stringent data protection regimes and protection laws on the planet. They have strict data protections, number one, on the GDPR. They have access, so European citizens, EU citizens, have access to control of their personal data. They have the right to be forgotten, which would prevent data surveillance and surveillance of citizens, and they have strict penalties for companies that violate their personal data rights. The United States could have the same in a U.S. digital currency. There's a widening gap between the U.S. and its G7 peers, all of whom have far more advanced CBDC projects than the U.S. I'll go back to the EU. The EU is in the final stages of a pilot retail CBDC program already, so far ahead of us. They're going to capture the future if we adopt this bill. The U.S. government has always led the way in harnessing technology to promote innovation. Look at DARPA and NASA space programs, clear examples of what happens when the U.S. invests in research and development. While concerns about data privacy could be real, we have the ability to protect that data in any architecture that we adopt. It's counterintuitive that my colleagues would be raising concerns about data privacy while thousands of private companies are scooping up data every single day. Vote no on this bill. I yield back.
The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Kentucky, the chair of our House Financial Institutions Subcommittee, Mr. Barr.
Absolutely. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of my friend from Minnesota, Whip Emmer's bill, the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act, a bill I'm proud to co-sponsor. This bill would prohibit the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency or a CBDC to anyone. Now, I don't think the Federal Reserve has the authority to do this. In fact, a cursory, simple review of the Federal Reserve Act shows that the Federal Reserve does not have the legal authority to issue a CBDC to individuals absent explicit authorizing legislation from Congress. The Supreme Court has also recognized Congress's power to coin money and regulate the value thereof, implicitly denying to the executive branch or to the Fed the ability to do this without congressional authority. That said, I think it's prudent to explicitly deprive the Fed of the authority to do this for a variety of reasons. As has been said, Americans' financial privacy is at stake here. And we should not try to compete with China by becoming more like China. The argument for a CBDC that, oh no, Beijing is doing this, we should do it too. Why on earth would we want to imitate, emulate, or copy Beijing's surveillance state authoritarianism? And to my friend on the other side of the aisle who just made the argument, oh, we're behind. The European Central Bank is doing this. When have we in this country, the United States of America, wanted to emulate Europe? This is America. We do it the American way, not the European way, not the Chinese way, not the communist socialist way. We do it the free enterprise way. We do it the limited government way. We do it the way to honor Americans' privacy through the Genius Act.
He making me bullish. He making me real bullish.
Should lead in innovation. And so, yes, personal privacy is at stake. Surveillance of Americans' individual financial transactions through a CBDC does raise serious privacy concerns and concerns about government control and politicization of loans, online payments, credit scores, tax compliance, federal contracts, monetary policy, and the like. But in addition to these privacy concerns, a central bank digital currency would centralize Americans' finances.
Will, we clearly waiting on these motherfuckers to pass the crypto bill, bro. Once you see them say, do, it's approved, official, then we going to the Mooney.
Availability of credit and increase the cost of financial services and products for consumers, destroying our conventional traditional banking system. Our banking system, in contrast to Europe, in contrast to China, is the envy of the world. Due to its free market principles, its dynamism, and its diversity, banks of all different sizes serve customers, communities, businesses with all different needs. And capitalism promotes market demand, which incentivizes banks to offer products that fit the needs of their consumers at the best price possible. We don't want to eliminate that. We don't want to erode the deposit base with a CBDC. So I ask you, Mr. Speaker, Would we truly want to lose the benefits of a diverse banking system that makes the U.S. the global leader in the financial system? Do we want to take actions to be more like China or Europe and decrease Americans' right to privacy? I went to the European Central Bank. I heard them lecture us about a CBDC, and it made me more convinced than ever that we don't want to be like Europe. The answer is we do not want to be like Europe. We do not want to be like the communists in Beijing. We must not disintermediate our banking system and allow for a creation of a CBDC. We must not threaten Americans' access to privacy. That's why I support this legislation and urge all my colleagues to do so as well. And if you really don't like a CBDC, to my Republican colleagues, vote for the Genius Act, which takes away all the arguments for it. I yield back.
Time's expired.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you. I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Himes, who is also the ranking member of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence.
Thank you, ma'am. The gentleman from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentle lady from California for this opportunity to speak, because this is one of the most ignorant things I have seen this House produce in a very, very long time. And it stuns me, frankly, that my good friends, Congressman Hill and Stile and Barr, are associating themselves with this bill. Let's be super clear about this. Nobody knows whether a CBDC is a good idea. A couple years ago, I wrote a white paper on CBDC, and I concluded that it's not clear. And the arguments for and against are being mooted today. Yes, it could be abused by an overwhelming executive. If we had a president that, for example, showed disdain for the Constitution, that was comfortable acting illegally, that wasn't comfortable with judicial rulings, it's hard for us to imagine that president, but this could be abused. It could be used for monetary policy. Bad idea. It could be.
And I looked over and it's not clear.
For an unbanked population. It could be a way of supporting the primacy of the American dollar. I don't know. And the truth is that nobody on that side of the aisle or this side of the aisle knows either. But we're going to forbid any inquiry around this to figure out whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. We're going to say you can't even research it. Stunning definition of ignorance. Imagine if we had said electricity is scary 100 years ago. It can kill you.
Bro, the frequencies they sending out in court is doo-doo. They ain't got no type shield power, no ammunition, no good comebacks. They just haters. Haters.
We don't know, and the majority says, let's not learn, because they have some ideological fixation that, frankly, I don't understand. 200 years ago, the private sector, which my friends on the other side of the aisle hold up, had issued currency. It was called scrip. Companies and banks issued their own currency, and this country learned that that was a terrible idea, and that, in fact, the central bank should issue currency, which is one of the reasons we are who we are today. So you might give the CBD at least some benefit of the doubt instead of being ignorant about whether we want to know the truth. We need to stop. We have to do this over a mega obsession, which is insanity, ignorance. Don't even find out the answer. The gamer said this is like a young 5-year-old who's angry and covers his eyes and ears and believes invisible. Imagine just my good friend Andy Barr saying we're not like China, we're not like Europe. What if there's a sterling or
the gentleman's time has
I
expired.
yield to the gentleman an additional minute.
I thank the ranking member.
The gentleman is recognized.
For all the rah-rah patriotism, think about this. And again, I'll acknowledge that we don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea, and we ought to find out. But let's imagine that the European Union, which Mr. Barr wants to dissociate with himself with, puts out a CBD that picks up real usage. Now we have a threat because we're still handing around because the majority said we shouldn't research something that may or may not be a good part of a modern person. Come on, don't hard for that. Don't risk putting us behind on something that could be really important to the future of the American dollar. Vote no on this ignorant bill. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from Arkansas.
Mr. Speaker, I want to yield 3 to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Davidson, who is the chair of our National Security Subcommittee.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davidson, you are recognized.
Thank you so much. Central bank digital currency poses an existential threat to Western civilization. It's essentially, at its heart, communist banking. Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, and Democrats in the Senate didn't walk around Omarova to be confirmed as a bank regulator. They want it. And that's what central bank digital currency is. Our colleagues on the other side of this debate act like we need to study communism a little harder to figure out whether it works or not. We've got plenty of evidence. It doesn't work. Central bank digital currency inserts government between you and your money. The government, another word for central bank digital currency is programmable money. Well, who does the programming? The central bank. They can condition your access to your own money with whatever parameters they put in place. They can filter transactions. They can even set them to expire. And monetary policy wonks in the communist banking world think this is a feature, not a flaw. They think that they could set your access to your money to expire, that it would be a better future. Every dystopian fiction that I have found, Brave New World, 1984, says this is the future of money, that it's corrupted into a tool for surveillance, coercion, and control. And frankly, our own current banking systems crept too close to that. We need to turn the other direction. And the market's telling us that. That's why cryptocurrency was invented, frankly. That's why it's so popular and it's a growing asset class. We need to say no to this, and we need to protect what the market is telling us consumers want. And we tested this under the Biden administration. They decided that they were going to spy on your bank accounts if you had $600 in your bank. And the public said, whoa, why are you bank account? And in a communist world, they say, well, if you have nothing to hide, why should you think here? The Fourth Amendment doesn't say that. It says if you have probable cause, and only then you get a warrant. Here, you build in the surveillance into the program. And look, I get it if all men were angels. We've seen massive in our own country, but in Canada, we saw Trudeau, a fellow traveler on the communist Long March, want to ban people's access to their own bank accounts because they were protesting his COVID policies at trucker rallies. This is very easy to do when you have programmable money. We need to say no to this. It is an existential threat to our way of life, and ideally we would do it at every opportunity. I urge all our colleagues to vote for Mr. Emmer's bill and stop this threat to our way of life. I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you. I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, who is also the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Capital Markets.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
I worked hard in school, but the grade I'm proudest of is to be the first member of this House to get an F from the crypto industry. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution says that it's the federal government and Congress who should coin money and determine the value thereof. But our Republican friends tell us that that means that the federal government should be stuck with 1776 technology, while the competitors of the dollar race forward in the 21st century. The largest super PAC expenditures in history occurred last year. The crypto industry spent more on independent expenditures. Take a look at this. You combine all of the expenditures from big oil plus big pharma, put them together, multiply by 5, and you still don't have what the crypto industry did last year. And so it's not surprising that we hear words like freedom, innovation, choice, and competitiveness used to justify making money for the crypto bros. And now we have a bill designed to prevent freedom, innovation, choice, and competitiveness when it poses a risk to their profits. This bill not only prevents us from ever having a digital dollar, it prevents us from even studying a digital dollar. Now, I think Americans will always have banks, credit cards, debit cards, Zelle, Venmo, cash, money market funds, and pursuant to the bill that it looks like we're going to pass today, they'll have stablecoin, a privacy device specifically designed for criminals and tax evaders. And then they'll have mixers to make it impossible for even the most advanced law enforcement, even with a warrant, to find out what's happening. So they have all those choices. What's the one choice you're not allowed to have? You're not allowed to have the currency provided for in the U.S. Constitution. You're not allowed to have a digital dollar or even a study of a digital dollar. You're not allowed to, if you don't want to carry a lot of paper around, you can't have the full faith and credit of the United States. Now, we've talked about the role of the U.S. dollar and the critical role that it plays in international transactions and why that is a major economic benefit to the United States. The crypto bros occasionally tell you out loud what they're thinking, and that is they want to minimize and destroy the role of the U.S. dollar internationally. So what do they do to hobble the dollar? They say the Chinese Communist Party can have a digital yuan. The Bitcoin bros can have a digital currency. But America is limited to 7076 technology. Our banking system is the envy of the world because we innovate. This bill says no innovation. I'll ask for another minute.
I beg your pardon? I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Oh, I'm sorry, additional minute for the gentleman, Mr. Sherman.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 additional minute.
Look, now you might think it's hypocritical that they tell us we have to have crypto because otherwise China will do it. Then they say we can't have a digital dollar because China is doing it. That's not inconsistent. They are consistent. Their consistent rule is you must do what makes profit for the crypto bros, including Donald Trump, and you must prevent them from facing any competition, even the competition called for by the U.S. Constitution. Today's bills will create a payment system designed for tax evaders.
First off, bro, just go ball.